We've projected wins. We've projected the pitchers. Now it's time to project the position players with my co-host, Alex Brault. Hey, welcome into the Set of Man. It's me, Kyle Stanley, and got my trusted co-host, Alex Brault, with me. Alex, how you doing, man?
Good. How you doing today?
I'm good, dude. I'm excited to do this with you. We're going to have some fun looking at about 13-ish position players, maybe 12. We'll see where we go on this, but we're going to have some fun looking at some of the projections here. Before we do, I want to make sure that you guys know, Alex, this is your second episode. This is also part of what's going to be something a lot bigger during the season, and that is our post-game shows. So why don't you talk about that for a quick second, and we'll jump in.
Absolutely. So post-game show, this will be maybe the only Cubs post-game show where you have the ability to call in. So we will be live on YouTube after every game Sunday through Wednesday. And we will talk about the game. We'll go over some stuff. And then we will carve out time where you guys have the ability to talk to us directly. If you didn't like a move that Council made, if you just want to be goofy for a couple minutes, absolutely. We'll take any calls we can get. But yeah, it's going to be fun. And the closer we get, we are now less than 2 weeks away. I'm so GD excited. I'm ready to roll, man.
Let's do this. And you've been doing this in our Cubs Talk Facebook group too. So if you guys want to have some fun with us in that group, Alex is doing those twice a week right now before the season starts. The link is in the description below. But it is time to get to projections. Now, you're going to see on your screen now, there's a site called Fangraphs. If you're not familiar with Fangraphs, it just popped up for you. Now, Fangraphs has a few different ways that you can look at projections. Right now, we're looking at ZiPS. There's also just the straight up Fangraphs projections. They're a little bit different from a WAR standpoint. So we're going to use the ZiPS one. I'll go ahead and attach both links in the description so that you guys can take a look at that. The reason we're using the ZiPS one is because it actually provides the stats. It shows you with the average, the on-base percentage, the WAR, all of that in one, where the Fangraphs one really just focuses heavily on some metrics and WAR. So we're going to just start from the top here. Alex and I are going to go over under on what we think from a WRC plus and also an overall WAR perspective. So first of all, starting with Nico, and we're also going to ask one question here. So my question to you, Alex, is what is one thing that Nico needs to do this year for you by the end of the season? Say this has been a successful year. What's that one factor for you?
This might be a cop-out answer, but my honest-to-God answer, stay healthy.
You stole mine.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But no, if he stays healthy, we know what his floor and ceiling are at this point. If he just stays healthy, we know we have a really solid Gold Glover at second base.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I mean, you look at Nico the last 3 years from a WAR perspective, 4.3 and 22, 4.6, then 3.9. So, I mean, he's going to be the same guy as long as he's out there and healthy. 135 games, 150, 151. So if you get 130 games out of him and you can get a 4+ WAR, I mean, it's like you said, he's not one of these guys that's up and down. So I think exactly that. And I'm going to stick to that as well. If you can get at least 130 games out of Nico, I think you at least see a 3.94 WAR. Now we're looking at what Fangraphs and ZiPS has, and they have a WAR of 4.2. So very close. I want to know, are you going to be over or under on 4.2?
So I actually think this is a really good number. So I'm going to go slight under, however, because I do think, at least in the beginning of the season, because he won't have a full spring training, and I know he's working out now, but it does take guys time to get into a rhythm. So let's say he struggles the month of April. That wouldn't be the biggest surprise in the world. I think that brings that number down a bit.
So last year they had him at 3.9. So you're going a slight under, you said?
A slight under on 4.2.
Yeah, I think I'm slight under as well, and that's mainly just because I don't think he's going to play in 150, 155 games. I think it's literally just going to be a health reason. So if he plays in 130, I'd be happy at 4.0. WRC plus, he's almost always right around exactly where they're expecting him to be. So I am going to say over. I'm going to say the barely over, though. He's going to have a good offensive season, especially coming off a year where it looked like he tried to do a few different things with his swing, didn't work out. I think he's going to go back to being exactly the player we've expected him to be, the same one that he was in September. I'm going to go 107, 108 on the WRC plus.
I'm with you. I think a slight over, just because last year, remember, there was that whole thing he wanted to add power to his game, and you could tell that at least in the beginning part of the season, you could tell he was trying to hit for more slug, trying to hit for more power. I think if he just realizes, hey, you are who you are, you don't have to hit, 20 plus home runs. You can sit right at like 10-ish home runs like you normally do. That's good enough, especially on this team when you have other guys that can carry the weight and slug.
Dansby Swanson. Alex, what does Dansby need to do this year?
For me, it's offensive consistency. Because we know when he gets rolling, and he's not necessarily the most consistent hitter, but if he's just steady Eddie the entire year, I think all these numbers actually probably go up, and we'll talk about all those numbers in a second. But we know the glove. Last season was maybe, at least in my lifetime, one of the greatest defensive seasons I've seen from a shortstop, and he did it with a hernia. So
yeah.
if the bat can come up just a little bit and just stay consistent, it's a way different player than I think Cubs fans are used to seeing.
For me, it's slug. Last year was his worst career slug season if you since 2017. In 2017, he was 324 on the slug. And then his really good seasons there with Atlanta, he was in the mid fours. This last year, he was 390, so under 4. And the year before that, 416. I'd like to see Dansby, even if he's still the same, call it low 7s OPS and in the 240s for a batting average, if you can just get me to like a 430, a 440 slug, to just put a little bit of fear into the opponents while you're at the plate. There were just times where I was like, this guy is basically an automatic out. And even if he's not, he's probably not hitting a home run. So for me, it's the slug. For the WAR, they've got him under Nico at 4.1. Now, that was kind of surprising to me. Last year, 4.3. Year before that, 4.9. Year before that with Atlanta, 6.6. I'm going on the way over on this. Like, I think he's going to have a 5 WAR season is where I'm at.
No more questions, Your Honor. I'm with you. I don't really see any, just his defense alone will bump his number up. And then, like we just talked about, if the stick can come around and there's more slug, because in his first season with the Cubs, he hit 22 homers. Last year, we know he wasn't healthy, only 16. If he even hits 20, all these numbers, I think, will just go way up for him. And now that he's healthy, even in spring, he's looked fine, especially defensively. Over.
Sounds good. 99 WRC plus last year, 106 the year before. They've got him at 102. I've got an easy over on that as well.
Yep, for all the same reasons we just talked about.
Cool. The easiest one that we're going to talk about right now is going to be Kyle Tucker. First of all, before we get into these ridiculously low projections, I'll say, Kyle Tucker, what's one thing that you want to see from him to be a successful season?
Well, injury luck, of course. For me, I just want to see him be the hitter that we know he is. Because when the Cubs were good in 2023, Cody Bellinger was producing like Kyle Tucker does normally. And that faded in September, as we all hate to remember. So if Kyle Tucker is just Kyle Tucker, that's a great season. That's all we're asking him to do, is just, dude, be you.
Okay. I'm going to get a little more specific, and I'm going to say I want a 30-30 season out of him. He has stolen 30 bases before in his career, and 30 home runs is going to be easy for him, I believe. So let's get a 30-30 season out of Kyle Tucker. Of course, that means that he's going to get, ridiculous contract extension requests, which are not going to probably be met by the Cubs, but that's neither here nor there. And for that reason, 3.6 is just insulting. That's insulting to say that Kyle Tucker, who played in 78 games last year and had a WAR of 4.2 and a WRC plus of 180 and hit 23 home runs in 78 games, is only going to have a 3.6 WAR season. That's dumb. Over on the WAR, over on the WRC plus.
Oh, absolutely. I wish this was Vegas, because I would be not that I'm a big gambler, but I would be betting the overs on all these numbers.
It's okay. You can have that gambling addiction. If you don't want to share with us, that's up to you. But
Stay in school, kids.
yeah. And just for reference, for those of you listening on the podcast, they have him at a 131 WRC plus. Again, last year in 78 games, 180. Come on. All right. Next up is Ian Happ, 3.4 on the WAR and WRC plus 120 is what they have. What do you need to see from Ian Happ? And I'll even throw this in there on any of these guys. If you even have a bold prediction rather than what you want to see, I'm gonna have that on the table too.
All right, good to know. So for Ian Happ, what I really want to see is, and this is the most meatball take, I just want to see his batting average come up a little bit. His on base is fine, but as a leadoff guy, I just want to see him. He will have more at bats with runners in scoring position. We hope. I do think he is going to. Kyle Tucker's going to carry the offense, but I think Ian Happ, it's a we go or you go, we go situation. So if he can just hit a little bit more, 243 average last year, it's not terrible. But in 22, which was his lone All-Star year, he was 271 batting average, 342 on base. So if he can just bring that up a little bit, I know it's meatbally, but I would like to see the batting average for Ian Happ come up.
So the reason I said I'll accept bold predictions too is because I've got a bold prediction for Ian Happ, and it is that he will have a 30 home run season. And the reason is his career high, which he has done twice. In 21, he hit 25 home runs, and last year he hit 25 home runs. The reason is he's changed that right-handed swing, or at least he's working on the change of that right-handed swing. It's looking a lot more like his lefty swing. His righty swing has always been more of to the right side, line drives, ground balls. And if he starts putting the ball in the air as a righty, especially at Wrigley Field, I think that there is another 5 home runs in that bat pretty easily, even though he gets less at bats from the right side. So that's my bold prediction, 30 home runs from Ian Happ. When we look at the WAR, 3.4, you over or under on that? Last year, Ian Happ, according to Fangraphs, was a 3.6.
And according to Baseball Reference, he was a 3.9 last year. So, I mean, again, this is with defense. I think these numbers just go up a little bit. So I know I just sound like a broken record, but 3.4 seems kind of low for probably one of the most underrated Cubs of the last decade. This guy is great on defense. He's a consistent offensive presence. Maybe he's not what people wanted him to be when he was a top prospect, but we need to start putting some respect on Ian Happ's name out there in Cubs Kingdom. Because I can tell you, in the dugout chats, there's been a lot of Ian Happ slander, and I will not stand for it.
I think he gets a bad rap because so many people are, for the same reason with Seiya, he's not clutch. And that's fine, but the dude's a good player. I'm with you, 3.4, definitely higher, just even for defensive alone. 120 WRC plus last year was 122. So where are you at there?
So I think that's a really good number, to be honest with you. I would take a slight over, because if I like your 30 home run prediction, because even if he does, let's say he hits, we know he's got power from the left side. So let's say 17, 18 from the left side. That's been about his average. Say instead of 10 homers from the right side, which I believe is what it was last year, we bump that up a couple, all of a sudden, 30. So I'm going to take a slight over here just because I'm with you. I believe that his right-hand swing is getting better.
If I had that bold prediction and didn't say over on the WRC plus, then I would be wrong. So at some point you and I have to disagree. So It's going to come here, but we've spent a lot of time on the first 4. So we're going to speed through and get to number 5 here. PCA, WRC plus of 100, WAR of 3.3. All I care about for PCA for success in 2025 is catch everything hit at you and steal over 40 bags. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. I think for him, a successful season, at the very least, Gold Glove. And that's, for me, that's almost a lock at this point.
Okay.
And honestly, I say 50 bags. Get a Gold Glove, get 50
Oh,
bags.
50.
There's a bold prediction. I think he gets 50 just from living in Wisconsin my entire life and the Craig Counsell era here in Milwaukee. That team runs and they play defense. This Cubs team can catch the ball, led by PCA, and they're going to run a heck of a lot more than I think people realize, and especially when they brought in Quentin Berry. So, yeah, 50 bags I think is attainable.
I'm very easily over on the WAR just because they only have him playing 136 games. Last year he played 123 and was a 2.9 WAR, I believe. So just automatically, I think the defense is going to get him up. Are you over on the WAR then?
Yep. Sweep it.
I'm going to ask you what your WRC plus is. They're saying league average hitter.
I think that's all we're asking him to be at least this season, right? So I like the number. He's not going under that number. If he's in the 90s, this season has gone just terribly, I would say. So I would say even if it's a slight over, I think he's got to be over 100. I would be pretty confident in saying that.
I'm taking the under on this.
Really?
Taking the under. I think that he's got a lot of confidence. I think he's got a lot of ability to adjust, but I also think that at the end of the day, he's still very young. And we saw the streak that he went through last year, tail two seasons. I think he will be better and more consistent. Last year, he was an 87 WRC plus. I'm not saying way under. I'm saying 97 and 99 kind of thing. But luckily, because of the type of player that he is, you get him. If he can just have an on-base percentage, they're saying 301. If he can be at that 301 on-base percentage, he's stealing 40 to 50 bags.
300, I think, is a good number for him. They have his projecting batting average at 249. I also think that that's relatively doable. But I get your point. He's young. We saw his streak, his cold streak, but then he figured it out. And at every level he's been at so far, coming up through the minors, once he kind of figured it out and it started clicking, then he was off to the races and didn't really look back. So maybe I'm optimistic, thinking maybe that happens now at the big league level, but he's shown it in the minors. So I'm a little more optimistic in his offensive output.
Okay. Seiya Suzuki. This is an interesting one. WRC plus 130 and a WAR of 3.1. Now, they think he's going to hit 21 home runs. And I'm telling you right now, if Seiya Suzuki does not hit at least 28 home runs this year, I just don't think that he's hitting his potential. So 28 is either going to be a successful season. Anything under that, you didn't hit your potential, Seiya. What about you?
It just very quickly on that, I'm with you that we need to see a little more homer power from him. 28 seems high to me, though, and I don't disagree with you necessarily, but he just hasn't done it. And at this point, by year 3, we kind of know what you are. So maybe he just is a low 20s homer guy and maybe just won't ever reach that ceiling. For me, this is another one of injury concern. I know I said that a lot, but defense, we know he won't have to worry about that a lot. But the last couple seasons, he's been sidelined by obliques and nagging injuries, and then he had that mental break. So for me, get comfortable in your DH role more consistently, I should say. So actually, let me rephrase that. Get comfortable in your new role. You're not the primary right fielder. So if he can just keep on doing what he was doing at the end of the season while staying healthy and none of these nagging obliques and all that stuff, I think Seiya Suzuki will have a good season. I don't know if he'll have 28 homers good season, but I do think he'll have a pretty solid season.
Well, and this is the key thing, what you just said, mainly DH. And so when they say 3.1 WAR, my concern on the WAR is because he's not playing defense. Well, he might actually increase his WAR because he's not playing defense.
That's true.
But because of that, I think it does become more difficult. So I'm going to go on a slight under on WAR at just a 2.9 or 3, only because he's not playing defense. But once again, if I say that you need to hit 28 home runs, your WRC plus better go up. And last year it was at 138, so can't go down. And if you do better, or I'm going on the over on WRC plus.
So I'm with you on the WAR. I'm under. I just for the defensive reasons. And last year, Baseball Reference had him at a 3.5. So I'm going to take the under on that. As far as his WRC plus concerned, 130, again, it seems like a really solid number to me. I can't say exact. So for that reason, I'll take a slight under. I don't love it, but I do think that there's a chance, and I'm not wishing this, but we've just seen it where all of a sudden he's out for a month because of reasons, and that dips that number a little bit. And I only say that because he hasn't played a full season yet. His high in career games played was in 23. He played 138. So I'm going to take a slight under. I don't love it. Not confident, but I'm going to take a slight under. If he's in the high 120s, I think that's a relatively realistic outcome.
Michael Busch, they've got him at 116 and a 2.3. Last year, he was a 2.3 and he was a 119 WRC plus. So they're basically saying he's the exact same player. And for that reason, I'd like to just echo that. I would just like to see him be the same player on offense and great at defense throughout an entire season. Whereas last year was a little bit of a liability in April, a little bit of May. So if he's just a great defender, plus he puts up the same offensive numbers. I know a lot of people are like, hey, I want to see him hit 30 home runs. The metrics say he should have had a worse offensive season than he actually did. How about you?
I'm with you. I think for me, the one thing I want to see, I think the defense, I think he's going to be awesome. You want a bold take? I think he wins the Gold Glove in the National League at first base this year. Yeah,
there we go.
I thought he was so good defensively, and doing that while not having played that position at all was super impressive, and I don't think we give him enough love for that. Offensively, if he puts up the same numbers, great. I just want to see it stretched out more because a lot of his numbers dipped after the All-Star break.
Yes.
And that's where you get all the expected batting average of supposedly 217, when in fact it was 248, and it should have been worse. All these numbers dipped after the All-Star break. So if he can stretch that out and his full season is like 248-ish, great.
So WAR 2.3, WRC plus 116. Where are you at on those?
So I'm going to go over on the WAR because like I just said, it would be strange for me to say Gold Glove winner and a WAR of under 2.3. WRC plus 116. I'll take a slight over because I do think, and maybe I'm just looking at his spring and getting excited about it, but he does look a little more under control. I know last season, one of the bigger issues I had was it looked like all of his swing decisions were predetermined. Like, 0-1, green light, we're going. And it didn't matter where the pitch was. This spring, and granted, again, it's spring, small sample size theater. I get that. But he looks a little more decisive. He looks a little more, how do I want to say this? Engaged with the game plan, I guess, if that makes sense.
Well, it makes sense also because on Baseball Savant, he's in, I believe, the lower third of bat speed in the league. So if you have slower bat speed, you probably are making decisions earlier. So that makes sense. I'm over on the WAR from a defensive standpoint. Again, he was a 119 WRC plus last year. They're guessing 116. I don't think it's going to be much lower, but because of the metrics, I am going to go on the under. I would be happy if Michael Busch was still over a 110 or 112 WRC plus. Fun one here. And then we're going to get into catcher Miguel Amaya and then the bench, Matt Shaw. Nothing to go off of, yet they still have him at a 2.2 and a 105 WRC plus. We have nothing to go off of. So what is either your bold prediction or your marker for success for Matt Shaw?
Marker for success, I think the offense is going to be there regardless. So for me, I just want, young fella, what do you got at third base? What do you have on the defensive side of the ball? He made one play so far this spring that we've seen on TV during an actual game. So we don't know what the defense looks like yet. All reports, in fact, you said this on one of your podcasts earlier this week, you either get, oh, he looks great, or it's, there's some stuff. It's not going to be Christopher Morel level, obviously. That was, unfortunately, not great. Failed experiment. So for me, if he is just comfortable and solid defensively, I think that's a massive win. And then, honestly, whatever he gives offensively, I know that a lot of people are relying on his bat, like from the fan perspective, like, oh, this guy, he's got to carry us. This is the second coming. I'm a little more like, if he hits 230 with maybe 15 to 18 homers, I'll take it. I just want to know defensively for the next 7 to 10 years, we're good.
Interesting. I would like to see Matt Shaw bat at least 250. I don't want to see his average down low like that, just based on the type of hitter that I've come to know. But my marker for success, Alex, is the number 0. And what I mean by that is he uses 0 of his minor league options. When he's up here, he stays up here. And to me, that's going to be the marker for success, not this back and forth thing. Let's just keep him up. He's the third baseman of the future. Let's try it out. Let's give him the space to be a little unsuccessful in the beginning, hopefully a little bit better than what PCA was in the beginning of last year. That's my marker for success. And if that is the case, I think a 2.2 WAR, man, it's aggressive still, because I do think that he still will have bench days. So they've got him in 117 games, 507 plate appearances. Man, I feel like it's aggressive, but I will take the over, because I think he's going to win. He's going to at least be top 3 rookie of the year. So I'm going to take the over. I'm going to say he's a 2.5 or somewhere in that area, maybe even flirting with 3. What about you on the WAR?
I wanted to join you, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but I am going to take the under just because I do have questions yet. Defensively, like I just mentioned, I really want to see what that looks like. That's not his natural position. I know he told you when you interviewed him, yeah, third base, I feel really comfortable there. Great. I just want to see it. And like I said, the bat's going to be the bat. I think much like PCA, it might take a minute for him to adjust, especially not because he got off to a slower start in spring training just with the injury. He might be a little tiny behind the 8 ball, although I say that and he had 2 hits yesterday. So what do I know? But I just think everything combined, and maybe there is a trip back to Des Moines. I don't want to see it, but maybe. I do think that number, I feel comfortable with the under here.
Okay. I'm going over on WRC plus also. I feel good about that. I feel like at least 110 for him in his rookie season.
I think that's attainable. I'm with you. I think over here, which I know contradicts what I just said with WAR, but I do think
we don't know about his defense. His defense could bring that down. So
that is true. Who knows?
Yep. We're going to end with Miguel Amaya. And Miguel Amaya last year had a 0.7 WAR and 83 WRC plus, which all sounds not so good, but when you see what his first half was, then it is just such a major improvement. And what they've got for him is a 1.2 WAR and a 96 WRC plus. I'm going to skip right to just the over-under on this. Because I think we both just want to see more consistent offense and we want to see better defense. Am I right? Is there anything else to add to that?
No, you're right on. Just consistent. If you can be the Miguel Amaya from All-Star break on, cool.
Yeah. So WAR 1.2, over or under?
I'm going to go over. And I don't feel great about it only because offensively, even this spring, he just, again, looks like he kind of has figured it out. There's still some things I don't love, but overall, offensively, he looks a little better. I do still have some questions about the defense. So a 1.2, can I say same? That's probably a cop-out answer. I'll go over it just because of the offense. I still have a lot of questions about the defense.
I think this is my hot take. I think Miguel Amaya is going to be a pleasant surprise throughout the entire season. I think he's going to be a 2 WAR player at least. And I think he's going to have a WRC plus of flirting with over 115, maybe even the 120s.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at with Miguel Amaya.
My eyebrows are singed. That is a hot take. 115 is aggressive considering, last year, well, I don't know what his second half stats were. And I should have did the splits that way. But yeah, I hope you're right is what I'll say. A little more skeptical.
Listen, we could talk about Carson Kelly, John Birdie, Justin Turner. I kind of want to scrap that because it's going to be bench guys, even though Carson Kelly and Miguel Amaya are being considered kind of like 1A and 1B. I want to ask you the real question here, and which is, of all these guys that are listed on our screen, which from a WAR standpoint that is either on the bubble or we're like, hey, they might be competing for a 26-man spot, or just for sure, like they're going to start off in the minors. Which of these is the closest to the actual WAR that one of those non-26-man roster or bubble guys is going to actually have by the end of the year? And we've got guys on this list from Jonathan Long all the way up to Owen Casey. Who you got?
I'm going to kind of go off the board. It's a guy that not a lot of people are talking about. I really am kind of into Nicky Lopez. I think he's got an outside shot to make the team. But his career, his WAR, so I'll just do since 2023. So 2023, he had a one WAR. Actually, he got traded. So he had a 1 WAR with Kansas City, then was traded to Atlanta where it was a 0.8. So we'll say a 1.8 for the season. Last year, with the worst team in baseball history, the White Sox, it was only a 0.2. But outside of that, and he's got a couple negative wars on here, so maybe I'm just...
Didn't he have like a 5 WAR season or something like that?
In 2021, with the Royals, he had a 4.4 WAR season.
Wild.
So part of me thinks that a 0.9 is doable. Especially, it sounds like Nico will be ready for when they come back stateside and open up the season in Arizona. But if there are any questions or something, God forbid, will happen to John Birdie, and who knows, they might cut him tomorrow because I've been on a roll with guessing guys make the team and then they get cut. So I do think between the defense, you're basically asking him to be Nick Madrigal if he makes the team. So for that reason, I think he could get to a 1 WAR. I don't think that's impossible. It might be hot, but I don't think it's impossible considering 2 years ago he was at a 1.8.
All right. Since, first of all, I love the take. I think Nicky Lopez, first, from like the experience standpoint, from the likelihood of him coming up on that minor league deal, I like it all. I think if you would ask me this question 3 or 4 weeks ago, I would have been like, future Kyle, you're crazy. But future Kyle is now in a place of, I'm becoming a Gage Workman fan. Now a 1.6 is what they have for him, which, by the way, ranks 10th on the team, which is just crazy to think. I don't think he's going to get tons of playing time, but I do think that the defensive WAR carries so much weight that his defense and what I've seen from that 1.6 shouldn't be that difficult if he gets enough playing time defensively. Offensively, here's the question marks, and our crew member on the team, Mr. Ty Lewin, made this. He's got to prove that he can hit major league pitching. What you're seeing on your screen here is basically 3 different categories: pitchers that have pitched over 60 innings in the MLB since 19, pitchers that have pitched under 60 innings, and pitchers that have not thrown an actual MLB inning in their career or since 2019. He's dominating those last 2 categories of guys that aren't really that experienced. He's not doing so well against the actual established major league pitchers as of the last couple of years. But I think that bat is in there, and I think the defense is what's going to keep him on this team. And if he can adjust from a offensive standpoint and just get 2 starts a week and come up on the bench and get clutch hits will get you some WAR. So I think 1.6 is doable. That's where I'm at.
I don't disagree, especially, and they haven't yet, but he was working out in the corner outfield spots too. So
now that would be interesting.
Well, in the battle between Brujan and Workman is what it seems like, with Nicky Lopez in the mix as well for that last bench spot. If he can up his defensive versatility, I think that gives him the inside track. But like you said, Major League pitching, and Matt Shaw seems to be healthy, but if they went to Japan with him starting at third defensively, I'd feel great. Offensively, you got to go up against Yamamoto. Game 1. Here you go, young fella.
Yeah.
Try and figure this out.
We'll see. All right, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this projection show. Alex, I had a bunch of fun doing this with you. We'll have to look back on this at the end of September and see just how close we got. But that's going to do it for us here on the Setup Man. I'm going to go put my arm on ice. We'll see you later.